Alright, even though I kind of want to go to bed, we're just going to get Bemelle's one over and done with. Let me just grab the guide. Alright. We've never chosen this one before. I know you. You are brash, but not intentionally cruel. I'm sure all is well, and I know that I feel like skipping does actually get rid of the voice acting. Bemelle smiles and claps me on the back.
You're a good woman, Kika. Smart, too. You've never been here, yet you knew more of the guy than I did.
I know about Garvin, truthfully.
Is that so?
I don't really care.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. Yep. I believe we should go. He eagerly smiles back. Place my hand over his, pull him forward, kick it off. Current format has worked so far. Need to wait the timer again. Encourage her to keep going. He gently runs a thumb over the top of my hand before he releases it. Oh, look at this blush. There's a clear sense of affection to it.
We need to run.
Do nothing, sorry. Though Bemelle constantly looks to want to reach out towards my empty hand, always thinking better of it before doing so. Okay. With a sigh, he leans his head to the side, having it rest slightly against mine. Usually, Bemelle's comfort and good nature gives me at least the urge to smile, but right now it feels like a hollow victory. Okay, I have to see Bemelle. Lingering for only a moment, I start following the trail Bemelle took. It doesn't take him long to notice I'm there, and he slows his pace so I can easily catch up. We fall into step for a short while, neither of us speaking. Eventually we come to a thick stand of trees and wordlessly weave our way through the branches. Once we're hidden by the foliage, Bemelle leans against a tree trunk, head hung low. Negativity radiates off of him, but I don't know what I should say. Fortunately, he breaks the silence.
I apologize for back there.
I nod firmly. His reply isn't unexpected. For as long as I have known Bemelle, he has had a tendency to let his temper flare, then regret it later after processing his thoughts.
I know that dealing with these sorts of situations calmly is part of the job. But I cannot tell myself everything is fine or that none of it matters. Sure, I can feel something without it being anger, but I've not figured that out either.
Rather than speak, I try to listen as supportively as I can while Bemelle continues to argue with himself. He sighs while pensively rubbing the bridge of his nose.
Am I simply being foolish? Would it really have been so harmful to try and help someone else instead of focusing solely on oneself? It looks to me like we're telling ourselves these lines to avoid responsibility.
I don't know. It's possible you helping would have worked better. It's also possible it would have been worse.
Bemelle stares across the empty waters of Sinnlos.
I want it to be clear that I have not forgotten that those people across this lake are depending upon us. Not for a moment. But would they want us to be so focused on them that we should turn a blind eye? Well,
apparently Lou did something so terrible that the game can't even tell us what he did to make him be executed. That's all honestly is bothering me the most right now. They were like, he was like so secretive about it and like, it will cause you more trouble if I'm with you when you go there. And then you like go back to meet him when things are better and he's just like, oh yeah, he was executed, yeah. His death was pretty bad. Like, okay, but why was he executed? Was that never a question? I don't know, that bothers me.
Even if they would, does that matter?
That bothers me.
We're more than weapons, we are people. Do we have to cast that aside? Turn away from our fellow humans just to achieve a so-called greater good?
This ending's actually different in the way that we don't help the guide.
This village is a haven of saints. They are only as worthwhile as we are, and these people on the bridges with us, aren't they?
I don't know.
I can feel the weight of his words settle upon me. I have had similar thoughts and have questioned what the correct choice is. But unlike Bemelle, I have always been silent. I clench my fists tight to try and stop from saying something rash. Bemelle closes his eyes tight and rubs his face again. It is clear this hasn't been enough to give him much peace. Eventually, his eyes reopen and look directly into mine.
What do you think about all this, Kika? Please, be honest with me. I want to hear it.
Suddenly, my eyes are hot. My vision blurs slightly from tears I desperately am trying to hold back.
I really don't know. That is the truth.
My words are soft. Whether he heard or not, the look on my face is enough to garner attention. His eyebrows shoot up in surprise. He walks over to me slowly, concerned.
Kika, what is troubling you?
I don't have the answers to what you were wondering. Who are we meant to protect? Everyone we can? Whoever we're told to serve and no one else? Just ourselves? Should we only try to protect others when the risk is minimal? I have no idea what the right option is.
Bemelle's confusion only mounts with my words.
I am sorry for disappointing you.
No, you haven't disappointed me in any way. I never should have expected someone else to give me answers to those kinds of questions. It is only, I did not think that...
He does not finish his thought, but I know what he meant to say.
You did not think I was concerned with these issues?
He smiles awkwardly over being caught.
Yes. You never seemed to be bothered by anything we experienced before now.
With his words, my carefully held resolve crumbles. In an instant, my cheeks are wet with hot fluid cooling in the chill air as it slips down my face.
I have always cared. I've always been afraid and confused, but I have kept up a...
I stop and gasp for air, my throat almost as tight as when we were running on the bridges.
farce of strength in order to get by.
I breathe deeply with relief, terrified and lightheaded from my confession. Bemelle's voice is as delicate as flower petals.
I had no idea. How could I not have noticed?
Because I did whatever I could to make sure no one did. I have never wished to appear weak in front of others. But the truth is, I barely get through each day. I often feel overwhelmed with sadness at all that we have experienced.
Bemelle gently places his hands on my shoulders as I try not to sob wildly.
Kika, I truly apologize for all the thoughtless things I have said to you.
I shake my head, sniffling.
There is no need for you to apologize.
He smiles, the warmth almost enough to make me forget the damp.
I beg to differ. I have failed to treat you right.
You have always been respectful.
A person needs more than respect from their comrades. They also need support. I have never given you that kind of consideration because I believed someone like you did not
I really
need
want to take a picture of my cat. Yep.
The same could be said for me.
I may need to pause to do this.
Nonsense. You have listened to my rambling on more occasions than I can remember. Though I admit my memories may not be there due to being drunk many of those times.
Okay, I'm gonna pause quickly. Okay, I took the pictures. Bemelle laughs at himself while glancing in my direction to encourage me to do the same. Comforting words make me smile, and I feel my tears finally cease to fall. Then I will continue to support you. He grins wider than he has since we began this horrible journey.
You have my thanks.
And you have mine.
Abruptly, his expression becomes serious once more.
I will come to answer these questions someday. But no matter what I decide, I will still put trust in your judgment.
I fear I may not live up to the belief he seems to have in me, but I nod firmly. He returns my nod.
Perhaps we should go check how everything is on the island.
That sounds like an excellent idea. And I will accompany you, of course.
No, you'll just stay
Glad to
there.
hear it.
You'll just stay there alone. Let the Nixie come for you. Together we walk back towards the interior of the island. Both our moods lift as we stay side by side. Bemelle and I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but we managed to pick our way through the bush quite well. I don't know if I can skip right now? Okay, no I can't. Continuing on, Bemelle and I cross the island in search of Margaret. Out of nowhere, a shudder runs down my spine and I barely stop myself from checking behind me. Darkness flickers through my mind and I hold my breath. A pat on my back brings me back into the light, a reminder that I am not alone. I look up to see Bemelle. Bemelle, and his touch more comforting than words could be. Suddenly, I know I do not need to hide my emotions. There is no reason to act as though nothing is wrong when it is. Bemelle already knows. I have hidden my emotions for so long that it is still my first instinct, but somehow I sense an assurance from him. Bemelle will be there to remind me that it is okay, and to support me when I feel I might break from the weight of our experiences. I give Bemelle a hesitant glance. He notices and returns my gaze, staring into my eyes. I feel the words spill from my mouth before I realize what I'm saying.
Would you like to take a walk with me?
I take a moment to part some brush out of my path before explaining myself.
We could pass around the edges of the forest where there's less in the way. There doesn't need to be a purpose to the walk. It only needs to be a way to spend time together. I would prefer that to not doing anything.
I would be delighted to accompany you, Kika.
I'm gladdened by his response, though it only makes me feel all the sillier for suggesting it.
Perhaps it may be better not to after all. We'll be walking all throughout the night.
I believe I've spent quite enough time resting. If I'm being honest, I think I need a break from all this waiting around.
My lips curl into a smile.
All right. We'll do that then.
I don't actually know what this one is. After we
Of
speak to
course.
Margaret.
That's our first priority.
Thank you, Bemelle.
Bemelle moves a little closer to me.
I'm happy to.
I'm not sure if we'll be of much help, but there is no way I am leaving Margaret all alone here for longer. She may want someone to talk to. It takes longer than I had hoped to track through the brambles, but we find her in decent enough time. Margaret begrudgingly lifts her head as we approach, enabling me to see that her face is damp and tear-stained while her eyes are red and puffy. I don't know how much it'll let me skip, if anything.
Something the matter?
I take it the guards are doing their rounds.
Bemelle and I steal a glance at one another. Bemelle lightly chuckles.
It seems we are. Old habits die hard.
Well, that's nice.
She speaks somewhat curtly, but at least she no longer seems as
I'm
depressed.
happy to report that everything's in order on this front.
Good to hear that.
Margaret isn't saying what's actually on her mind, but I have no way to reach her.
Is that everything?
Bemelle scratches his chin.
We can leave you for now if that's what you'd like. Wouldn't want to be a nuisance.
That would be most appreciated. I'd like to have a little time to myself before we return back out there.
We'll be around if anything comes up.
Thank you for that and for stopping by.
I smile at her. Bemelle gives a wave.
Well,
Goodbye.
The two of us leave Margaret as per her request. I swallow thickly as we go. I can only hope that Margaret will be able to sort through her thoughts before it is too late. Bemelle lightly squeezes my hand, garnering my attention.
So, would you still be interested in our little stroll?
yes. That would be nice.
Bemelle beams at me.
We best be heading out then.
Bemelle pointedly tightens his grip on my hand, despite already holding my attention. I return his squeeze. A bashful expression washes over him, though it's not enough to make him let go. We reach the edge where the shore meets the forest and trek along it. Bemelle makes small talk on just about anything and everything. It reminds me of our journey before we reached the lake. The more I dwell on it, though, the more I realize how drastically things have changed in a matter of days. Bemelle's discourse forms a mirror from one time to another in my mind, casting all that has changed in glaring silver. He swings our hands back and forth slightly as he continues to lead the conversation, trying not to let me become too absorbed in my troubled musings. After winding our way around a large stretch of the island, a massively overgrown tree intersects our path. I move to push the offending branches out of the way, but Bemelle stops me.
Please, let me handle this.
I let my arm fall as I watch him. Bemelle unsheaths his sword and chops the branches down with a single blow. He releases a hearty laugh and I grin at him, the sheer audacity of the action enabling me to ignore his sword misuse.
It's been far too long since I've taken it out. At this rate, I'll forget how to even use a sword before we arrive.
I see.
I unsheath my own sword and level the honed edge at him.
Would you be up for a bout of sparring?
I'm already bored. He doesn't miss a
I'll
beat.
accept that.
I step onto the sand to give us a little space, and Bemelle eagerly trails behind me. Once we find our footings, Bemelle assumes a defensive stance, Center turned away from me and sword drawn in front of his body. I do the same as I circle him swiftly, being sure to stay just out of his striking distance as I watch for the slightest tell of an opening. Whenever he attempts to put some space between us, I dart in towards his back, forcing him to stay mostly in place to defend. It takes 3 sharp jabs before what I was hoping for happens. As he turns to face me, one of his feet lands slightly out of place in the loose sand and I take my opening, striking immediately. Bemelle regains his balance just before I make contact though, parrying and using his heavier frame to force me back a few steps, even as I jump out from the sword lock. Hoping to catch me off balance from his push, he strikes, but I weave out of the way. Bemelle has more strength and a larger striking distance than I do, so I've learned to capitalize on my higher agility and smaller hit zone when facing him, even if I usually prefer a more grounded strategy. We trade blows, neither of us ever scoring a hit but both keeping each other on edge. For a little while, time flows past us easily and there is nothing that matters but avoiding an attack that will never be lethal, grinning as our steel clashes. Noticing my labored breath, I call off the fight.
Stop. We can't exert all our energy here.
Bemelle releases a winded chuckle.
Thank God there's at least one of us responsible enough to point that out.
I smile and return my sword to its scabbard. Bemelle does likewise and glances over at me.
Would it perhaps be all right to at least finish our stroll before sitting back down again?
We shouldn't go the entire length of the island, but I suppose we can walk just a little longer.
Why did I start this route? I thought it would be shorter. Walk closer to Bemelle. I allow myself to drift closer to Bemelle. There's not too much space between us as we walk side by side. Bemelle views me from the corner of his eye and looks more than pleased. For a brief moment, all of the troublesome circumstances seem to float away from our minds and we enjoy each other's company. I wish it could go on for so much longer, but it's only a while later that I have to speak up.
We really should rest before nightfall.
I'm fine with that idea.
Bemelle leads us over to the area where the guide mentioned we were going to meet. He lowers himself down onto the ground and stretches out right there, presumably intending to wait until the guide arrives. That's a little more dramatic of resting than I planned. I'm just checking the time. I walk over and make myself comfortable next to him, though not as comfortable as he has made himself. It isn't very long until Margaret appears. She doesn't comment on our resting positions. However, she's clearly smirking about
Hello,
it.
Margaret.
Are you still holding up fine?
I would rather speak of anything other than that.
I think we can manage that.
The 3 of us quietly wait for the guide's arrival, occasionally chatting with one another as we rest. Right, can I skip now? No.
It's almost time.
Now I can skip. Okay. I have to watch this time, if you can believe it. I can't act rashly here. The guide has managed through every situation we've been through, as well as countless others we did not bear witness to. I resolve to continue with what we've planned and keep my position. Without flinching, the guide keeps hold of our position on the waterline. I periodically switch between watching him, the others, and the rest of the shore. As I scan the forest, there's a stinging groan. Was that the guide? Can't be. I stand rigid in shock, a painful prickling sensation going down my back, before whipping around to face the truth. He's crouched low on the ground, staring forcefully at a group of Nixie head-on. There is a whole other group of monsters rapidly crawling back into the water.
Hey.
I step forward with a shout, but he puts out one hand to halt me. I do not go further, and I and those creatures motionlessly watch for what he will do. His fingers curl tightly around the upper half of his staff. With great effort, he begins to rise to his unstable feet. The moment he is fully upright, the guide aggressively swings his lantern at the encroaching Nixie. He catches them completely off guard and they scatter to rejoin the rest in the black depths. The guide crumples back into the sand unceremoniously. I can hear his ragged breaths as he regains his composure. He tugs at one side of his cloak, bringing it closer around himself. It covers up a dark, growing stain creeping through his right pant leg. Even while collapsed, he seems compelled to hide his fragility. Is that admirable or saddening? I do not know anymore. The guide roughly pulls himself back onto his feet and forces himself to remain standing. The rest of us must remain strong as well if we are to survive this night. Gripping my lantern, I watch over everything and everyone in sight vigilantly. After an untold period of time, I think we can skip here, yes. Now, Okay, almost as soon as he finishes his statement, he stumbles, nearly falling back down. His hands slip down the shaft of his staff as he sinks to the ground. He gasps under his breath.
Are you all right? Is there anything we can do? I don't have much, but I could still clean and wrap it.
I take a few hurried steps closer. I reach my hands out towards him, which he curls away from like a barn cat. He turns his gaze up to me and shakes his head.
I tended to it myself when you were still on the shore.
Moments tick by as I stare at him, growing ever more nervous. As horrible as his injury is, the larger situation at play is dire for all. It is a weight bearing down on each of us, threatening to bring the entire group to its knees rather than only our lead. We can't stay here.
Are you able to walk?
He eyes his feet with gritted teeth and clenches his staff tighter.
Not like this.
A beat of quiet passes before he continues, his voice slightly ragged.
I have a way. It will be enough to get to the other side.
Shaking, he removes a hand from his staff and reaches into his cloak, searching for something. I have little other choice but to watch as he searches his pockets. The panic that we thought was past starts creeping back in. He retrieves a small vial with a viscous liquid inside. Swishing it slightly as he holds it up, I peer at it curiously.
Drinking this will numb the pain. I'll be able to ignore that my leg is injured for the time being.
I analyze the vial hesitantly. I'm pensive as I mull over the possible other effects it could have. Something that potent would be a miracle drug if there were no downsides along with the positives.
Is that safe? It must cause drowsiness or have some kind of impact on you. Not to mention, pushing your leg so hard when it's in that state could permanently ruin it.
He regards me with his lip twists partway into a snarl.
My leg isn't broken. It will heal without issue once I'm able to treat it. In order for that to happen, however, I need to live.
I flinch slightly. He wouldn't usually snap at such a question. The pain must be truly getting to him.
What about side effects? You didn't say what they were.
Bemelle steps in closer to the guide, his question harsh enough to be a demand. Bemelle's trust in the guide has steadily declined since for the first night. With the way he's acting, I cannot ignore the sense that it may come to a head before the journey is over. The guide levels a deeply unimpressed look at Bemelle. He then sighs, raising the bottle up so that it's more visible. He swishes it almost impatiently.
It can slow reflexes and cloud the mind.
Immediately, Bemelle's eyes widen incredulously. Margaret quietly gasps, bringing a hand to her mouth. The guide heaves another sigh, though the pain in it makes it sound more akin to a groan. He is still impatient with the group's delays as time marches on.
I will only be taking half a dose. It won't ease all of the pain. However, it will reduce the odds that I will be notably impacted by any adverse effects.
I know how you feel about others coming close to you, but is that truly the best solution to a situation like this? You need to be clear-headed here.
Margaret looks at the bottle and then at him skeptically. Bemelle takes another heavy step forward. He meets the guy's eyes stonily.
No, you can't drink something like that. I'll carry you.
Bemelle presses forward, encroaching on the guide's personal space. The guide visibly shrinks back again, however he can't hobble much farther away due to his injured leg.
That won't...
Before the guide can put forth another word, Bemelle brazenly snatches the bottle straight from his hand. Everyone is stunned to silence by Bemelle's action. Even the guide has trouble expressing any sort of emotion beyond furious disbelief. Look at the time again. Bemelle ignores all of our reactions and smiles triumphantly, holding the bottle like a trophy.
You have made it very clear that at the first inconvenience, you would leave us all for dead in the water. As you are now, that is impossible.
The guide narrows his eyes at Bemelle, who only gives him a taunting grin.
So, this isn't about any possible adverse effects. You want to leave me injured and immobile on purpose.
Bemelle shrugs, then returns to smirking almost cockily.
If there were no side effects, I likely would have thought nothing of it. However, mentioning those risks triggered something in my mind. You've never done what's best for the group, you only choose the safe option for yourself. With that in mind, I can't exactly trust you when you tell us that the medicine is truly our one option. Now, even if carrying you means that you will be more at risk than otherwise, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Bemelle chuckles derisively and rolls his eyes while spinning the medicine vial between his fingers.
I hope you're proud that I'm following your advised method of not considering others, guide.
Despite Bemelle's sarcastic jab, the guide returns to his usual empty, deadpan expression and makes no attempt at a rebuttal.
There, he accepts it. What of you?
Bemelle then turns to look at us curiously. Margaret snorts slightly at the inquiry.
That stunt was so ill-advised, I never expected even you to attempt something like it. What if the guide had another bottle with him? We would have all been abandoned by now.
Bemelle pulls a mischievous smirk.
I'd have taken that bottle too.
Margaret shakes her head at his response. However, she doesn't seem too upset over this. She seems more at ease than she has been for some time. Bemelle seems rather pleased by the reactions thus far, grinning widely at us.
If anyone is worried about my ability to carry the guide for the rest of the night, you shouldn't be. Rest assured, a willowy man like the guide won't slow me down whatsoever.
He puffs his chest out proudly. Margaret can't suppress the laugh that bubbles up from her chest. She waves off Bemelle's boasting with a silly grin on her face.
You are an absolute buffoon.
Bemelle faces me expectantly. The guide also levels a steely gaze in my direction. We may be having a bit of fun getting the upper hand on the guide for a change, but if we don't go back now, we never will. So do we truly need to? All that matters is reaching the shore safely. What really is for the best in this situation? That could work. Bemelle's grin widens ecstatically at my lack of resistance. I feel nerves turning my insides jittery as I think overdoing something so drastic. No matter the fear, this has to be done. Even if the guide can be trusted to show us the correct path, he is not reliable when it comes to anything else. If we let him do as he wishes, it's very possible that at some point during this night, he will leave us to die.
I believe you are capable of carrying the guide to the other side. That seems like the least risky option we have for the group at large.
Bemelle lets out a small triumphant laugh and tosses the vial over to me. I catch it and quickly tuck it away in my pocket. I'll return it to its rightful owner once we've made it to the shore. Bemelle steps back up to the guide's side, who still shrinks slightly beneath him. The guide narrows his eyes as Bemelle grows near.
Fret not. I will take proper care to lift you. This isn't the first time I've carried an injured traveling partner. I'll have to hoist you over my shoulder since we've still got a ways to go. I ask that you don't make too much of a fuss about it.
The guide stares at him plainly.
I'm hardly in a position to resist. You've taken away my ability to do anything but be dependent on you and your decisions. Even though this path was only taken because I am not someone you care for rather than true pragmatism, it is a better mindset to have on these bridges than how you've acted thus far.
Bemelle snorts out a sarcastic laugh.
Thank you for your approval.
He bends down and grabs the guide, lifting him over his shoulders. Bemelle is careful not to bump the guide's legs. He still winces in pain, clenching his staff tightly as he's jostled back and forth. However, the arrangement is quickly settled and Bemelle is ready to begin walking with the guide in tow. Margaret has a hand over her mouth, looking like she can't decide whether to laugh or weep at the state of our journey.
I can scarcely believe that this is the solution we've come to. With the way the guide acts, though, I suppose that I shouldn't be too surprised people are willing to turn on him this way.
Continue down this bridge. We cannot remain here any longer.
Bemelle gives him a nod and starts to walk across the soggy boards as the new head of the group. We walk along the bridges together in the stillness, the guide's occasional instruction of what paths. Oh no, it's doing it again. I swear this is a problem with the game and not with the recording. I'm gonna give it a save because it doesn't seem to be very reliable when it starts doing this. The paths to take is the only conversation that reverbs in the night. Yeah, I'm gonna need to restart this game. Because it's gone weird again. Okay. I will be back in a second. Okay, we're back, even though it's not going to be for that long. I Our steps echo throughout the bridges, and I'm more acutely aware of just how many paths there are spread across the lake than ever. Yeah, it feels like the longer you have the game open, the more prone it is to doing that laggy, buggy thing. That's interesting. Even the voices of the lake are quiet, but it's no consolation, for in their place is the otherworldly squishing sounds of the prowlers contorting their aquatic forms across the boards. It's impossible to tell exactly where they're coming from. The sound seems to echo in every direction at once. All I know is it's too close for comfort. I do my best to ignore the feeling, but the sounds still fill me with a constant, lingering dread. And, yeah. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.